ಎಲ್ಲರಿಗೂ ನಮಸ್ಕಾರ. I am at again with the second session of the communication, that is effective communication, and we will try to even cover a brief overview about the classroom communication. So, let us start up with the effective communication. What is effective communication? If the communication is successful, if whatever I mean to say, if you understood in the same manner, whatever the sender is trying to say, if the receiver understood in the same manner, in the same sense, with the same meaning, then we say it as a effective communication. And almost all the time we will try to go for the effective communication. So, let us begin with the quote, that is, communication is your ticket to success. If you pay attention and learn to do it effectively, most of the successful people, if you see, you can see they are the excellent communicator. Okay. So, communication is very significant. Okay. With this, the unit 4 of the NET syllabus, we will try to discuss this. That is, in our previous session we have discussed about the communication meaning, types, objectives, characteristics, barriers of effective communication. In this session we will try to discuss about the effective communication, verbal and non-verbal, interculture and group communication, along with the classroom communication. The first and foremost is why we need to have the effective communication. See, the effective communication will help us better understand a person or a situation and enables us to resolve the differences or the conflict, and it will help us to build a trust, respect and relationship. That is why the effective communication is required. Then see, no two people ever communicate perfectly. However, the more clearly we communicate, the greater is our ability to trust. Again, going with the same, why effective communication? See, effective communication helps to understand a person or the situation in a better way. Because of that, we need effective communication. It helps us to solve the differences, solve the problem, build the trust and relationship in an organization, in a family. Hence, we need a communication, effective communication. Sometimes our message is misunderstood or we misunderstand the received messages. So, to overcome that, we need a means of effective communication. It will help us to connect with the colleagues, with the teachers, with the parents, with our family members, with the near and dear ones. The more effectively we are able to communicate, the more trustworthy, the more bonding, the more relationship will be there. Effective communication can help to influence or persuade other people. The ability to effectively communicate with others is one of the most important tools for professional and personal success. As I said, if you look out any successful person throughout the world, one of the major characteristics they would be having is they will be the effective communicator. Hence, we require a effective communication. See, seek first to understand, then be understood. What we do? We do vice versa. We seek first to understood, then we try to understand the others. No, the another way is true as per the Stephen Covey. First, we need to understand someone else, then we must say that they have to understand us. See, as I have said in the previous session, 80% of the workplace issues are communicated related issues. It may be a misunderstanding, it may be a conflict. 80% of the conflicts, 80% of the problems, issues which are there in an organization are with related to communication. So, the effective communication plays a very significant role because of this. See, if the world disagrees with the tone of the voice and non-verbal behavior, people tend to believe that tonality and non-verbal behavior. It is by Albert Mandrabin. See, when we are discussing about the questions in the previous session, it was one of the question, what the people will believe, whether the word or the non-behavior clues. The people will follow always the non-behavior clues. Then, what are the guidelines for the effective communication? See, these are the points which you can practice and you can be a effective communicator. That is, the first one, choose the right means and mode. Always choose the right means and mode for the communication. It may be with respect to the cost, with respect to the resources, with respect to the significance of the information or own your message. Whatever you deliver a message, try to owe it. That is, it is your responsibility. Yes, I have said it. Okay. If you say no, then the people will lose the trust on you. Then offer complete and relevant information. So, whatever you say, try to say it clearly, concisely, accurately, and fully, so that the other person can able to understand. Then obtain feedback. Without the feedback, the communication process will never complete. Hence, try to obtain the feedback, else or try to give a scope to give a feedback. Then think of the recipient. Whenever you are acting as a sender, always try to think about the receiver, whether they are able to digest this, whether they are able to follow it, whether they are able to understand it. Okay. So, think with the perspective of a recipient. If I am a recipient, what would be my need? What would be my desires? What I may perceive from this particular thing? Okay. By thinking that, then try to deliver or pass on the message. Then verbal and non-verbal congruence. Okay. Whatever you say, the verbal activity and the non-verbal activity, your facial expressions, your eye contact has to follow that particular thing, has to sync with that. Then only the communication will be effective. As I said, if you say yes, what do you mean? Whether you are saying yes or no, the people will believe it as a no, because the verbal, non-verbal clue is no. So, the verbal and the non-verbal has to sync together. Then repeat if necessary. We call it as a paraphrasing. Okay. Repeat. If you are not able to understand it, say this is what you said. Okay. Try to repeat if it is necessary. Then do not judge the other people. See, as the human being, we have a tendency of being a judgmental. So, in the previous question paper, sorry, in the previous questions, okay, we have discussed about this, that the people are judgmental. That is one of the barrier. Okay. So, never be a judgmental. Then rely on the facts and the figures. Okay. Try to always rely on the facts and the figures. These are the guidelines. If you follow that, then you can be a effective communicator. Along with the guidelines of effective communication, these are the principles you need to follow, so that you will be a effective communicator. So, what are the principles? Principles of clarity. Your message, your information should be clear enough. That is what the principle of clarity shares. Principles of brevity. Okay. There is no brevity, must not be involved in any way in your messages or in your communication. Simplicity, it should be simple enough. Timeliness. Okay. You need to understand the importance of the time. Now, you need these kind of a contents. So, we are passing on to you. After the completion of the examination, if I pass on the information to you, whether it is required, whether it is valid, whether you will accept that, no. Now, you are in need, so we are trying to give you these kind of sessions. So, as per the time, as per the needness of the time, we need to give the information. Principle of the compass, what is required in this particular environment, we have to give it. Principle of the integrity, principle of the strategic use of informal organization. A proper informal use of the organization has to be followed. Okay. What is formal? Formal means the hierarchy, manager, supervisor, okay, a clerk, like this. Their relationship is different. Informal means a manager will go and have a tea with the executive. Okay. So, we have to strategically use the informal organization, so that the effective communication can takes place. Principle of the feedback, there should be a provision of getting a feedback from each and every one who are involved in a communication, then only the communication will be more effective. Principle of alternativeness. Now, if we are not able to understand these particular thing, then the alternative mode of the communication should be established, so that the effective communication can happen. Then principle of language control, no abuse words, no harsh words, okay, or we will follow only these languages in your organization. So, that is principle of language control. So, those are the principles you need to follow for the effective communication. Then next, the intercultural communication. See, now the global has become, now the entire globe has become a village, because of the kind of information technology we are using. any corner in the world, we with the one touch of a button we can able to establish a communication now. Hence, there is a need for the intercultural communication. In the earlier days, that is a century prior to a century, okay, hardly any person used to visit another country, but now it has become a common. Now the people are there who will just go for the dinner to some another country, breakfast at another country, lunch in at another country, okay. Because of the information technology, because of the technological advancement, now there is a huge demand for the intercultural communication. That is communication from one cultural background person with the person who is from at another culture background. Okay, let us start. Intercultural communication is an important factor in today's globalized world. People travel and they need to communicate. In the most cases, it is out of one's culture. Culture is a combining with each other gradually. Sharing information with people belonging to different culture is known as a intercultural. People who have the deal with the other culture for a problem of intercultural communication, even though they take language classes, but they are not able to use or they are not able to recognize the cultural importance of a people. Like I will try to give you an example. See, in the Japanese culture, if you are trying to attend an important meeting, then you have to wear a blazer. Okay. If you are not wearing a blazer and are going for a meeting, then they think for you this particular meeting is not that very important. See the cultural differences. Okay. Then further, I hope you know what is a culture. So, I will try to skip this particular thing. Okay. Like only one thing I need to highlight in this particular slide is it can be tangible, the culture can be tangible or intangible. That is what you see, that can be a culture, what you can't see even that can be a culture. Like for example, iceberg, the traditions, the practices which my ancestors are following and passed on to me, that is a part of my culture. Likewise, every individuals do have the culture. Okay, we need to respect and we need to able to follow that when actually we are trying to communicate with them. Okay. So, these all include the same thing. So, now we will come to the important slide, that is managing intercultural communication. Be culturally sensitive and aware. When you are trying to speak, adopt or trying to establish a communication with another culture people, be sensitive to their culture. Gain knowledge of the culture you have to adopt. Think of what other people will interrupt before trying to say them. In many of the culture, it is not even in our Indian culture, if the elders are speaking, then the youngers will not interrupt them. It is called as a misbehavior, but in at another culture, it is quite common for them. Okay. So, be aware of a non-verbal clues you are giving to them, listen, encode and decode carefully, use pictures if you do not know words to describe it. It is better to use the picture if you are unable to come out with the words, especially if you are trying to speak a foreign language. Avoid slang and local language, get a feedback, be observant, be open minded, respect other cultures, be resourceful and do not be echo-centric to the culture. Okay. In these way, if you follow these particular ways, then you can manage the intercultural communication very effectively. Then group communication. Okay. Slightly we have discussed about this in the types of communication, that is a small group communication. Group communication, as the word says, it is communicating in the groups, okay, so small groups. Okay, fine. We will go ahead. That is styles of communication within a group. It can be a dominant, like for example, if you are communicating in a particular group, you can observe out of a group one person will start dominating in that particular group. Okay. That is dominant style. Influencer, the another person will act as an influencer. For example, a team leader may be there, he will act as a dominator and at another non-formal leader will arise from a team, he or she will be the influencer. Study, these communicators like to cooperate with each other. then conscientiousness, these value quality, accuracy and expertise. So, all the kind of a people you will come across with the groups, and you need to identify what is their style. Are they dominating? Are they influencing? Depending on their role. Okay, depending on their role in a group, you need to know which channel, which way I need to communicate with them, so that it can be effective. Okay. Now, coming to the effective communication questions. Here, communication with oneself is known as we have already discussed, it is known as intrapersonal communication, that is the D1. Organization communication is the overall communication. Grey point communication is usually the informal communication. Interpersonal with another person, and intraperson means within oneself. So, the correct answer for this is D. Then the term grey point is also known as I said previously, informal communication. The grey point communication is known as the informal communication. Downward means if I am communicating with my subordinate, then it will become downward communication. Upward means superiors, horizontal means with my colleagues, with my same level of employees. So, the correct answer for this is informal communication. Then, which of the following is not a principle of effective communication? Persuasion and convincing dialogue is one of the principle. Participation of the audience is one of the principle. One-way transfer of information is not a principle of effective communication. So, answer for this is C. Okay. We use the strategic use of informal, there I have mentioned informal, here I have written grey point, a bit trickier only. Okay. But one way transfer of information is not a principle of effective communication, as there was a principle of feedback, means we are encouraging for the two-way communication. And the next one is effective communication presupposes non-alignment. No, it is not non-alignment. Domination, we never support the domination. Passivity will not support. So, if for effective communication to happen, there has to be understanding. So, the correct answer is the fourth one, understanding. Okay. Now, we will try to move on to the classroom communication, that is effective classroom communication. Sorry friends, because of the lack of a time or because of the time constraint, I am trying to move a bit faster here, as the classroom communication has already been covered by some another resource person. So, just I am giving a overview of a classroom communication to you people, how the classroom communication should be there, because you are the future teachers, you will be a future teachers. So, you should know, you must know how to communicate with your pupil or with your students. Because of that, this is a part of a curriculum. So, let us start up with effective classroom communication. Communication effectively uses a variety of media to stimulate people and achieve the objectives of a lesson. Now, it has become very difficult to maintain the attractiveness or the attentiveness or the enthusiasm of your student. It takes a lot of efforts, really, I mean, so it will take a lot of efforts to maintain the attentiveness and enthusiasm of your student. It is really very hard to do so. Because of that, you have to use the variety of the tools, variety of the media, so that to maintain the attentiveness of your students. We will try to discuss about the same thing. Now, good communication skills are imperative. It is one of the important essential thing for being a teacher. You have to be a really excellent communicator. That is one of the essential. Then, what is the consideration for this? How we can do this? Assume the best for everyone. You have to think that each and every student of your class is a best student you have. Operate with the assumption that everyone has the students' best interest in the mind. All your colleagues have a best interest of students in their mind. Remember that effective communication is the key to having your suggestions and ideas heard and taken seriously. Keep a positive attitude. Keep the time to say hello and listen others as much as possible. Practice empathy and understanding. It may be with your colleagues, with your students. These are the consideration you need to follow, so that you can become the effective communicator. Then body language. As a teacher, how should be your body language? A person stands and presents, speaks volumes, even if not a word is spoken. Just by your look, the students has to understand what you intend to communicate with them. What are the considerations? Determine whether your body language is sync with your message. Make sure that your non-verbal signs match your word. Present yourself so that your postures communicate your confidence level. Keep in mind that the differences among the people may perceive you differently. Practice the eye contact. Your eye contact should be such in a classroom that you must see each and every student in their eyes, from right to left, left to right, front to back, back to front. Every one of the student, whether they are looking out at you or not, it does not matter. As a teacher, as a speaker, you have to maintain eye contact with all the audience available as a receivers. Then always use your physical proximity. What is proximity? As a teacher, you will be having a area for you, wherein for example, from here 5 feet, from 5 feet the students are sitting. So, these 5 by 10 is my proximity, it is my area. So, how I can use? I need to know, I can't stand at one place and give a speech. For an effective classroom, I need to optimally utilize that particular available space to me. Okay. Try to stay neutral in professional conversation. Okay. Be neutral, never try to be judgmental. Then positive communication. Interaction that are unassuming and clearly understood will be perceived as a positive communication. What is the consideration? Assume a neutral frame of reference. Do not form an opinion or frame of reference. Listen carefully. Okay. When we say effective communication or effective classroom communication, one of the essential thing is you have to be a good speaker. At important consideration is you have to be a good listener as well. Be open to learning. This is one of the important consideration for the positive communication. Then asking questions. When in doubt, go for asking a question. Ask about something that you do not understand. Do not ask a question to judge someone, whether as a student, okay, as an audience. Never try to raise a question to judge a speaker. Try, if you have a doubt, if you need a clarification, if you have a queries, then go ahead and go for the clarification or ask a question. Do not be afraid to ask for the explanation, to ask for the description, definitions about the scenarios being discussed. Okay. If you ask your question politely, no one will take it offensive. People will appreciate your interest. So, whenever you have a doubt, okay, as a student, as a teacher, if you have doubt, you can go and ask your colleagues, even you can ask your students. Okay. Then being prepared. It is good to show the consideration of others in a meeting by having everything you need with you and ready to use. Always be prepared, whether it is for a meeting, whether it is for the presentation, whether it is for the class. If you are well prepared, then you will be confident enough. That shows in your presentation, that shows in your preparation, that shows in your appearance. Okay. Then what is the consideration for that? Demonstrate your professionalism. It will demonstrate your professionalism. Prepare a list of questions or comments you want to address in advance. These are the probable questions you may be having. So, well in advance I will try to answer these issues. Okay. Come to the meeting with all the materials you might need, supporting documents, facts and figures, all the documentation you need to come along with that. Even in the classroom you need to carry all that. If anybody is having a doubts or need a clarification, you can provide those materials to them. Then being on time, I do not think so, I need to tell about this. Okay. Whether it may be a teaching, whether it may be a meeting, whether it may be a class, always try to be on time. It shows your professionalism. Then effective classroom communication. You need a language skill, you need a body language, you need a teaching skill, you need a interaction skill. These are the 4 skills required for the effective classroom. I said language, you need to have a command on a language, you need to have an appropriate body language, you need to have a teaching skill. Many of the time, many of the people have a language skills, but they do not know how to teach. Many of the time they may be having a teaching skill, but they do not know, or they doesn't have a language command. So, as a teacher you must possess these 4 skills so that you can be a good teacher. Okay. Effective teaching skills. See, the first and foremost thing is try to know your students. How to know your students? Try to interact with them. Okay. If you interact with them, if you give a space to them, if you encourage them to ask questions to you, then you will easily come to know about your students, their expectations, their needs. Okay. Then check students' listening skills, how attentive they are, how much they are able to listen to you, whether they are following you or not. Try to ask a question whether I am too fast, too slow, whether you are following me or not, whether there are any questions, queries. Draw and hold the attention of a students. Okay. You can tell a story, you can raise the questions to the student, by that you can draw and hold the students' attention. Express your ideas, your information, your views very clearly in a very simple manner to your students. Prepare, plan and present well. Use verbal, visual and vocal tools, the combination of all the tools, so that you can draw and hold the attention of your students. Then the next is the visual aids. Visual aids means the pictures, the graphs, tables, okay, wherein the student can be attractive. See, the human tendency is such, when there are the words and the picture, like this slide, the first thing we will see is the picture, then we will see what are the words written over there. So, try to use the visual aids as well, okay, which is very relevant to your lesson, which is easy to use, which is reusability, legality, clarity. Now, the IPR issues are there, intellectual property. So, you have to use it very carefully, okay, and it must not be distracting for your class. Such kind of a visual aids you need to use. Then effective interactive teaching skills. Interactive classes, the class should be always two-way communication, that is, it has to be always interactive. That is, the physical setting should be such, so that, say for example, in a given picture, see how it encouraged for the interactive stuff. Okay. All the people are facing each other, so that each one can see each and every one over there, or the maximum people who are available in the class. So, it make the interactive classroom. Okay. You pair the work, you make a group of students and assign a work to them. Good instructions, questioning and eliciting, handling the responses, giving the activities, games, okay, or the case studies to them, so that they can make a group and interact within a group. Then know your troubleshoots. Okay, these are the things you need to know as a teacher, which will try to make you more effective in your communication. Do I involve students in my lecture? Are the students involved in my lecture, or it is just a one-way communication to them? I will speak for the entire 50 minutes or an hour or 1.5 hours, and the students will only listen to me, or is there any scope for the feedback or the interaction from the student? Do I employ collaborative learning tools, wherein even there is a scope for the students to speak? Do I organize activities and the games so as to maintain the enthusiasm level of the students? Do I give the short, simple and precise instructions and examples to the student? Do I accept the individual differences among our student, because there will be a fast learner, medium learner and the slow learners? Do I accept all the kinds of students available in my classroom? Questions and responses. Do I ask a variety of questions? Yes, well and good. No, try to ask a variety of questions, so that to maintain the attention of your student. Do I let the students to think and formulate? Do I show interest in their answers? Do I involve other students in the conversation? Do I appreciate the good answers? Do I follow up the questions? Like this, you go on preparing the questions and responses. The more the interaction, the more the involvement of the students, the more energetic your class would be. Then your class typically, Okay, your typical class should be like this. For the first 5 minutes, what shall I do? Okay, shall I make a revision of what has been dealt earlier? Okay, what has to be followed by that? What has to be followed by that? What has to be followed by that? Then the conclusion. Then in next session, what I am going to deal with. That is what you have to do. That is a thorough planning of the entire hour has to be done before going for a class. Then instruction depends on the communication. Whose communication? Your communication, student communication with you, with all the other classmates, and what is the environment or the climate you have created in your class. Whether there is a scope for the involvement, that will be dependent. Then tip for effective presentation as a teacher or as a presenter. These are the tips you need to follow. The first and foremost is always try to know your audience. Who are the audience? What is their background? What are their expectations? Why they are there as a audience? Then express ideas very clearly, very explicitly to them. Check the audience listening skill, whether they are able to follow, whether they are able to listen. So, when you start, ask the last bench students whether they are able to listen to you, whether they are able to follow it to you or not. Then gain and try to keep the attention of your audience. Well prepared, well organized. Use the visual aids as much as possible. Then remember, messages are verbal, visual and vocal. Then effective visual tools can be understood in only 6 seconds if you are using a visual aid. It anchors the listening to the key concepts. Do not put audience in the reading mode. They should not read the slides you have put out, the information you have given to them. Instead, they just look a picture, yes, this is what it is, then they need to listen to you. Then enhance your verbal and vocal messages. Okay. So, what are the benefits of visual aids? See, it improves the memory because the human mind is designed in such a way that will capture and will try to remember the pictures more than what we read or more than the words we read. Speeds comprehension or the understanding, decreases presentation time, adds to the speaker credibility, decreases nervousness, and it will add the interest, and you can hold or draw the interest of your audience. See, this is what the facts and figures are as per the Hamilton. Audience recall, what they recall? 70% they will recall after 3 hours if it is visual, if it is verbal, and only 10% after 3 days. Then if it is only visual, 72% after 3 hours and 20% after 3 days. If it is a combination of a verbal and a visual, then after 3 days 85% of the content will be remembered by your audience and 65% will be remembered even after 3 days of your presentation. See, that is what we say, try to use for the verbal and the visual, that is a combination of a visual and the verbal in your presentation. See, the group communication skills. Speak clearly in a group, encourage others to speak. Group, don't try to act as a dominator in the group. Try to encourage each and everyone in your group so that they can come out with their thoughts, with their feedback, with their suggestions. Don't monopolize, don't try to dominate. Listen well, paraphrase. This is what you mean to say? Okay, paraphrase, try to repeat what they said so that they can understand, yes, you are following to them. Stick to the topic or the task, don't groom more here and there. Whatever the topic is there, try to stick with that particular topic. Communication means only the communication, nothing else. Human relation skills, because you are dealing with the humans, you have to know about the human relation skills. Okay. Interpersonal communication. Listen. Okay. When I say listen, try to give your attention to the person you are speaking with, you are communicating with. Try to paraphrase and summarize so that the other person can say, yes, this is what you mean to say and I am following you. Okay. Define the terms. If you are using a jargons, then try to say, yes, this jargon means this. Okay. Then build a rapport or a trust, try to show the empathy or the respect. Remember, messages are verbal, visual and visual. Okay. Then class climates, see both the extreme climates I have given you. If it is a defensive climate, then it is evaluation, it is a controlling, you try to evaluate the students, you try to take a control of your students, use the strategies to control them, you try to neutralize the entire student, you feel as a superior because you are a teacher and they are you feel your students are inferior, and it is a certainty. But if it is a supportive classroom, if you create an environment as a supportive, then it will be description instead of evaluation, it would be descriptive, it would be problem oriented, it would be spontaneity, it would be empathetic, you create a equality and there is a provisionalism instead of a certainty. Then our challenge as a teacher, our challenge is to model and teach effective communication in our classroom. This is one of the biggest challenge every teachers will face. So, you have to be the effective teacher, effective communicator, so as to be a effective teacher. Okay. Coming to the question and answers, I have grabbed it from a previous NET question papers, NET question papers. See, here the assertion and the reasons will be given to you and you need to choose the correct combination of a code of the question and answer among these. See, what is the assertion here? The assertion here is the initial messages to student in the classroom by a teacher need not be critical to establish interactions later. Okay. What it says? The initial message to the student in the classroom by a teacher need not be critical, okay, to establish interactions later. It has to be a critical, right. The initial stage, the first stage, the first class is more important, okay, and you can maintain the relationship later on, but the first is much more critical. What is the reason? More control over the communication process means more control over what the students are learning. Okay. More control over the communication process means more control over what the students are learning. The reason is correct, but the assertion is false. So, the correct answer for this is the fourth one, that is A is false, but the R is true. See, likewise the next one, assertion to communicate well in the classroom is a natural ability, whereas the effective teaching in the classroom demands knowledge of the communication process. To communicate well is not a natural ability. Okay. To communicate well is not a natural ability. Okay. Effective teaching is a classroom demands knowledge of the communication process. Yes, it is true. So, again the fourth is correct here, that is the A is false and the R is, the reason is true, but the assertion is wrong. Okay. The next question is, which of the following set of statements is correct for describing the human communication process? Non-verbal communication can stimulate ideas. Yes, very much true. Communication is a learnt ability. No. Okay, it is not a learnt ability, it is a learning ability. We can still now by this stage also we can learn about the communication. So, A is good, A is correct. Communication is not a universal phanekia. No, it is a universal phanekia. Communication cannot break down. Yes, the communication is a continuous process. So, D is correct. More communication means more effective learning by students. E is also correct. Value of what is learned through classroom communication is not an issue for students. Yes, even F is correct. So, the corrects are A, D, E and F, that is the code 1 is right for this question. Next, the classroom communication should essentially be contribuent. No, it should never be controversial. Empathetic, yes, it should always be empathetic. We need to look at the student perspective. We need to keep ourselves in the shoes of students and try to see whether they are following us, they are understanding us. So, it has to be empathetic. It should not be abstract, it should not be non-descriptive. So, it has to be, the correct answer for this is, it has to be empathetic. Okay. So, I thank you one and all for your patience, your valuable time, and I take this opportunity to thank the entire team of Coaching Academy, the Journalism and Mass Communication Department, and the entire team of Akka TV for giving me such an opportunity. Thank you one and all.